Now that we've covered the parts of an entity as well as relationships, let's go through how you actually read and really figure out what these relationships are saying. So let's start off with the relationship between transaction and account. Now the way that you read these is you look at the table or the entity transaction, and the relationship is between that and account. You can tell because they're connected with a line. So when we look at this a little bit closer, we're saying that transaction belongs to one and only one account. And account has one to many transactions. Now, if we think about that logically for a second, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know about you, I'd be pretty bummed if I had a bank account that I can only use for one transaction. I would expect that the account can be used for a number of transactions. And you might be wondering, okay, well then how come this account has a minimum transaction of one? And I want you to take a look at how we're actually identifying the attributes for account. There's a starting balance. There's not a current balance. In this particular data model, we're going to calculate the current balance based off of the starting balance and all the transactions. Okay, so that's a pretty cool thing that we can do. I don't want to go too off into that. I want to focus on how we read this ERD. So looking between account and cust account, we see that account has one to many cust account, and cust account belongs to one and only one account. Now, that makes a lot of sense. And this cust account entity is actually what's called an associative entity. And an associative entity is what we have to do to address the many-to-many relationship. Because we're essentially saying that one customer can have many accounts, and an account can be held by many customers. There's a lot of joint accounts, there's a lot of business accounts, there's all sorts of situations where an account is going to be held by multiple customers. The reason that we have to address those situations using an associative entity is we have to be able to tie each instance of customer to their accounts. We have to be able to tie each account to the customers that can access it. Well, we can only do that with an associative entity. What the associative entity does at a minimum is it takes the primary keys from each entity that is involved in the many-to-many relationship, which is typically just two, but it can be more than two. It takes those entities, those attributes from those entities, the primary keys specifically, and those become the attributes of the associative entity. You'll notice that, for example, in this cust account entity, we're taking the cust ID attribute from customer and the account know attribute from the account entity. And those become the primary key of cust account. And they're also foreign keys because they don't originate in this entity cust account. So it's very important that we can do that, okay? And that's referred to as an associative entity. Now finally, reading the relationship between customer and cust account, we say that customer has one to many cust account. Cust account belongs to one and only one customer. It's important to note that not every way of drawing an ERD is the same. Okay, I like to use a standardized format where I specify both the minimum and the maximum number of times that a relationship can occur. Not everyone likes to do it that way. Okay, you'll see that in the book, it often does not specify that minimum. And I think that that's not how I personally prefer to specify things. But there are multiple ways of doing things, and ultimately it's up to you to find what you think is best for your environment. So that's just how you read these entity relationship diagrams. Hope that was helpful. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.